You ever watch Unheard? The British fellow, young lad who does talk shows and out of the
I don't think
UK.
so.
He he's quite interesting, and he's fairly balanced. And he went to Austria day before yesterday, and walked around and started interviewing people. And
Isn't that where Hitler is
it
from?
just well, I tell you, the people he interviewed in the street, it blew me away. It could have been 1930, and it could be locking up a whole different group
Yeah.
of people. It was the same ethos. I mean, people were angry and saying they should be locked in their home. They shouldn't be allowed out until they're vaccinated. And it's like, wow.
Same in Canada, though, don't you think?
I found no. Well, again,
Yeah.
Toronto's damaged, socially damaged for obvious reasons. Out here where I am, it's people are way more laid back, and really question what they're being told. Yeah, this next wave is going to be interesting if they make all the kids. I was talking to a friend who teaches up north, and she has a JK and a kindergarten class, and JK don't require masks, but the kindergarten kids do. So half the kids in her class have masks, and the other kids don't.
Insane.
I mean, how does that make any
crazy.
sense? Yeah.
We don't know the long-term effect of any of it, including wearing masks like all day.
Agreed. Well, I know if I'm gone to the store and I've been wearing a mask, I feel my nose feels funny and I don't feel good, because you're recirculating your own air. So it'd be interesting to look at your blood chemistry after a day of wearing a mask and see if the CO2 levels are up and other harmful things are higher in your blood than if you breathe regular air.
Yeah, God forbid anybody do that research.
Well, the trouble is it's just not available readily. A buddy of mine was complaining about no research is being done and it's all vax. Well, I went to the University of Florida, and they have a database of well over 600 current research projects that are going on right now of all different components. What are what preventative maintenance, what upfront stuff should you be doing, what should happen if a person comes in late or comes in early to the hospital with symptoms, various different, all that research is being done, but no one's willing to talk about it. That's what I find so sad. I found a great little video from Carl Sagan did in the 80s, interview with Charlie Rose. And he nails it way back then that our whole society has given up on science, and science means listening to all aspects of the discussion and putting all the cards on the table. And he pointed out that no one in government has any science knowledge or skills, and the science departments were actually axed from most of the government departments at the judicial level, and people aren't making good decisions. Yeah, I don't know. I keep asking the doc, what do you think? And she keeps telling me, said, Wally, we do not have enough information to do anything useful yet. She went through SARS in Toronto, and she saw how long it took to sort that out and figure out what was really going on. And it broke her heart to see people at the window looking at their dying parents, right? But they weren't allowed to go in and see them. We don't think we got this right at all.
No.
I understand why last spring, why we locked down. Because we had no idea what we're up against, and the CCP wasn't giving us anything useful, wasn't sharing information, and I think everyone was assuming this was much, much worse than it turned out to be.
Yeah, that's how it was presented.
So I get that. Well, and
don't let a crisis go to waste. Some people made the best out of this.
But they denied it came from Wuhan.
They still do.
Except for, well, I think the UN has acknowledged it came from Wuhan, so that's something, I guess.
I think because anything terrible that happens, I think there is a opposite side of that is happening or will happen as a result of it. You know, the Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So COVID, terrible. But at the same time, it exposed all these institutions for what they really are. That, yes, science is gone to a large degree because we're not even asking the right questions. All of our questions are sponsored by this or that, this pharma, that big tech, you know, that beer company or whatever, you know, any kind of advertisement that is shown in news channels. And they all basically have the same kind of a political agenda. And if it wasn't because of internet, they already had taken over the lives of all the people. It's just, you know, it's this democratized technology that allows people to speak out, basically, to fight back. But some people don't. Some people don't fight back. And some people are delighted, like you said, like 1930s. Masks, to a large degree, I think has the same function for a lot of people that swastikas did. That it's a status symbol. That, hey, I am with you. I belong to the right tribe. I'm with this powerful. Right? So that's evolutionary psychology. Makes a lot of sense. But then, because of the form of our governance, we are doomed to deal with whatever the so-called majority, that in Canada, for example, is completely rigged, that system, that whoever gets the vote of downtown Toronto and downtown Montreal, they win it. Well, it's very obvious what's happening, you know.
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think what is very obvious is that we have completely left behind our technology, our tools, and nobody has any kind of a solution. And the power vacuum that has been created as a result of that is bringing a lot of different tribes. You know, they're forming again. They're making new alliances, and this is a war for power. And who sets the narrative, which direction, and you know the options are very radically different. So that's why nothing makes sense, really, because nothing is being said for the sake of the truth. Everything is being said for the sake of winning this war.
Well, the fact that the Democrats said they wouldn't take any vaccines that were developed by Trump, and now they're surprised when the other side is reluctant to take, you know, to do what Biden's saying. I mean, it's so, people can't seem to parse out the politics from what needs to get done, or what works and what doesn't work, or the science. I mean, well, the science is not even that part of it. It's just, it all gets polarized around the politics. And that should be the last place that we should hang our hat at, you know, for anything like this. I mean, the men in white coats shouldn't be telling us what to do either, but they can provide guidance. But then you muzzle half of them because they're not fitting the political narrative, and it all gets, and then people just get further and further entrenched in their camps, and none of this is useful. It's quite destructive, and as you're saying, it becomes tribal. I agree. I drop in on your podcasts and quite enjoy them. I'm just amazed at the people that you managed to get a hold of. It's just wonderful.
It's the work of the universe. I'm supposed to be talking to them, I guess. I'm wrapping it up, though. And Google, you know, I'm probably going to do like maybe 2-3 more episodes, because I think this, you know, the entire mood of the world is very different than having conversations. People who already have the base to have these long form conversations, I think all the focus needs to be on those people, and the rest is basically, it's not even time for mobilization. It's time for action for people. And so, you know, I'm gonna wrap it up, I think, and I'm gonna make a book out of it. Just listen to the episodes with people who I still enjoy that they were on the podcast, and then transcribe it and see what part of it is interesting, and then see if some kind of a pattern emerges to make some kind of like a arc.
That's a neat idea. I like that.
And then the audiobook basically would be the exact selection of those from the podcast itself. Yeah.
Very cool.
Who did you listen to? Which episodes?
The last one, it was, I can't remember his name now. You were talking about AI and alternate universes.
Right, Rizwan Virk.
Yes. Yeah. That was, I mean, I didn't understand a lot of it, but it was sort of cool that the conversation's being had at all, right? I think it's really neat.
Yeah, and he came back.
I mean, very often
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the second time.
And it's not like Google does you any favors on the YouTube channel.
No. Too much Trump supporting. And like, this is the wrong guy to have any kind of an audience.
Isn't that, I find that so frightening. I mean, that is so the CCP model being enacted over here.
I mean, they silenced the sitting president of the United States, so anybody else they can silence.
I still can't believe that. I still am absolutely gobsmacked that was allowed.
That was a point in history that everything, nothing could have returned after that point on. Because it's like all of this stuff essentially are imaginary contracts, social contracts between people, right? It's the reason that like Supreme Court building looks so epic, right? Because if they were in a pizza parlor, nobody cared like what they have to say. So once it's broken, that, Wizard of Oz, once people see behind the curtain, then you can't really unknow that.
Yeah, and I don't think social media understood the consequences of their actions, because people are leaving in a big way. So the only hope he has now is to set up his virtual reality environment.
Oh, Zuckerberg?
Continue to reel in the lost generation of people that all they do is online play games, and bring those in and keep brainwashing them. But I even think they're diverse enough that they won't fall for it. So I don't.
But at the same time,
the money's leaving.
At the same time, they're about to release their own coin, DM.
Yes.
So
it's going to be a centralized coin.
It will be a centralized coin. So
that's pointless.
Well, the thing is, they're gonna connect that to metaverse. Now, the good news is that at the same time we have decentralization and Web3 and all of these stuff that's happening. So the alternative that is being built is open source. It's decentralized. It's accessible to everybody. So he has tough competition, but at the same time, he can still take over a lot of aspects of society. You imagine that the entire institutions of the government or the culture will be rebuilt in Zuckerberg's metaverse with the values that he wants to push. And we do know what kind of values he wants to push.
Wants to be just like China.
Yeah, I think he
only him in charge.
Fancy himself to basically become God of that reality. Because that's exactly what it is. It will be a additional layer ultimately on this reality, and it will be augmented reality. It could be contact lens. It could be a brain-computer interface like Neuralink, that you run that application on top of it. So you have basically a subjective, customized experience of reality based on what you've built on top of it. AR. How have you been, David?
I've been pretty well, all things considered.
David's in Toronto. So Toronto, as I'm hearing, because Fritz was just talking about that you guys went to a pub, Toronto is not in lockdown or anything like that currently.
Just partial lockdown.
Where are the places that are in lockdown?
I mean, like the private businesses are still quite restricted. Like you need a vaccine passport to get into theaters.
They already run the vaccine passport in Toronto?
Yeah.
That's really messed up.
It is if you're not vaccinated, for sure.
What percentage of Toronto is not vaccinated?
I'm not sure. I would guess be like 10 or 20%. I think we have.
Well, those are the ones
vaccination rates.
Are on the bus towards the camps. Vaccine camps.
Yeah.
Who's going to enforce it if you're wandering around, or it's just when you're accessing anything that it gets enforced, right?
Yeah, you can wander around for sure. It's not that.
Well, in Austria, they're going around. Cops are going around and asking for vaccine passport.
I need to.
Yeah,
show me the papers. I need the papers. Show me your papers, sir.
Yeah.
You will sign the papers. Yep. Deja vu all over again.
Yeah, those guys look like they're almost in riot gear.
Like in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Austria also put the lockdown for only unvaccinated across country. New York, for example, that they do have vaccine passport, is something like 70% of African American population of New York, they're not vaccinated. So basically in apartheid, you know, it's a two-tier system in New York right now. And you know what's happening. People are like, oh no, people are waking up, but I don't think they're waking up fast enough.
Well, what's it like in Florida?
Oh, Florida is amazing. I was just telling Fritz, I'm very blessed. This governor is just the best. You know, it's not like, not only that he's not bending the knee, he is like firing back tenfold. So we've been on the offensive and our numbers are pretty low. I think it's the lowest or second lowest in the country now. And California and New York, they're exploding again. But, you know, seems like a lot of people, I don't say the majority, but enough people, they don't care about data, about evidence, about facts. Because there's still like on Twitter, there are people like, oh, Florida, everybody's dying, numbers are out of control. Like, dude, we live here. It's not like that. Like, no, you're just lying. The Russian puppet or whatever. So, you know, seems like it's a bigger problem, that part of the mentality of part of the society is broken permanently. And, you know, they're living in a different kind of a reality, which is a set narrative by the authority, you know, whether media or politicians or, you know, they're leaders, basically.
Well, the legacy media in Canada underwrites that notion that, you know, places like Texas and Florida people are dying in the streets. It's like a Monty Python sketch. Bring out your dead.
Is that what they're saying?
And they're well, they're very careful of how it's worded and how it's framed, because, you know, but the subtext that people are getting up here is, yeah, it's not good. Mind you, everyone I know that bugs out of this area and goes to Florida is gone. So anyone that has you know, residences in Florida that they use in the winter, they've all left. And the minute they opened the border, the U.S. were letting Canadians in. Bang! Everyone.
And now they're dead.
They're down there now. Oh yeah, clearly. It's so. But again, it has nothing to do, as you said, it's nothing to do with science and facts. It's all politics. So you have to underwrite the narrative that's the meme of the day in Canada, and everyone gathers around the bonfire and burns any of the witches that aren't following the prescribed narrative. It's quite bizarre, and it's insidious because it's never emphatically stated. It's sort of implied. If you read the text and read what's being said, it's yeah, very clever. It's something you'd expect from the Politburo.
I think they would have succeeded if we didn't have the internet. You know? Well, because, you know, they had very limited channels of communication before internet, and they were monopolized. So the kind of news that was being told to people as news, it was all tailored basically and fine-tuned to maintain some kind of a narrative. You know, and the newspaper is the same way. There were limited ones that are all owned by a small group of people. But the internet, you know, democratized this ability for, you know, anybody who has any kind of a device to create and share information. Right? Now, this disrupted the entire notion of truth. What is the truth? You know, what is the meaning of it? If words can be misinterpreted, quote unquote, it means that they were meant to be misinterpreted. Otherwise, if they're solid by design, by their nature, then you cannot change their definitions. So these are all man-made contracts that we've carried on with using these tools for many centuries, and now we have the ability to question the very fundamental of it. That, hey, you say good, I disagree with your definition of good. Right? That's a far deeper and bigger fight, war, over meanings and definitions that I think is only possible because of internet. Otherwise, people didn't have this megaphone. You know, the term I use, machine guns, monkeys with machine guns. We can't even comprehend the power of this, you know, but we use it because it's amazing.
Right. So how far back do you have to go in history before you find a new kind of media that had a similar change on society?
Probably cave paintings.
No, not that far.
What do you think, Martin Luther? And I mean, that was
that's what I was thinking. Like the printing press disrupted society at a fundamental level because, in a similar way of decentralizing the dissemination of information and having competing sources of truth, the church lost the monopoly.
Yeah, so it's truth, but with small t, because if there is capital right. T truth, then it's available to everybody at any time, anywhere. You know, it does not require any kind of knowledge or, you know, you train a certain way or meditate for a certain amount. No, it's just like, it's like sunlight. If it's absolute. If it's not absolute, what is the point of it? So
I should have said narrative rather than truth. They lost control of the narrative.
But if we move on from inaccessibility of capital T truth, then we're in the next phase of, okay, we tried postmodernism, but postmodernism that has been enforced through objective means. You cannot say that everything is subjective except what I'm saying. You have to take that objectively. It's like oxymoronic. Right? And now we are taking this to the next level. We have metaverse, we have virtual reality, and we can customize our own reality based on that. It seems like it all goes according to some kind of a plan. Isn't it? Perfect timing of everything.
The doc just keeps telling me that men are just too stupid to pull something like that off, that it's serendipity and bad luck. So I don't know. I mean, there you go. There's the other framing of it. But I think people took advantage of this situation big time. It played into the hands of a lot of global actors, and that's scary. So even if if they didn't precipitate it, they amplified it and went with it. I just, that interview we were talking about earlier in Austria, people in the street. I mean, the meme still works. I mean, in a society like in European societies where I guess the only word I can use is racist generally, they're quite uncomfortable with anything that doesn't fit in with whatever narrative they've created around themselves. I think we're still better here in North America that way. Canada maybe less so. US is still, there's lots of stuff on the table. And as you're saying, in spite of efforts by the social media companies and the government, there's still a lot of different truths and narratives on the table available to us. I don't know how true that is in Europe.
Well, apparently there are protests all over Europe, but media isn't covering it.
Yes, I gather that. I watched some of the guys I watch are posting that stuff. But the problem is in countries like Austria, a lot of the protests it's the extreme right. It's the vestigial remains of,
Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We went way too far left. And people, I don't know how closely you guys are following politics in the US, but what happened in this series of elections like 2 weeks ago or something like that, it's just mind-blowing. And now New York Times and Economist, they're all coming with pieces that Democrats are going to get owned in the midterm elections. But
so you're talking about the recent election in
Virginia was one of them, but also like New Jersey, which is supposed to be establishment's playground basically. A truck driver won over, I think, the Speaker of the House or President of the Senate of New Jersey, and he spent only $156 because people are voting for a piece of crap over establishment people now. People are done with them. But, they're not going to go down without fighting. They're just like, okay, here's the power. So it's going to be really insane. With all deep fakes and stuff, I can't even imagine how the next election cycle for president is going to be. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial, they apparently doctored one video that is problematic right now. And they use AI and machine learning to supposedly enhance it, but they alter the photo basically, or alter the image.
So I saw the video that the one presented by the prosecution was much worse quality than the one that they had in hand, because it didn't actually support their case.
It's insane. I mean, the fact that trial is even happening is just, a very sign that this entire system is broken really badly.
Well, why don't you think it should happen?
Well, because it's very clear it was self-defense.
No, that's what he's on trial for. It's to determine whether it was self-defense. I have no problem with him being on trial since he did actually kill 2 people. But I agree it was likely self-defense. But you can't prove that or even show that without going to trial. You can't have but you can't have the police being the judiciary and saying.
But you wind this back to the 60s, and the government would be pinning medals on Kyle Rittenhouse. There's something hugely changed in the whole social atmosphere and structure.
If Rittenhouse was an Antifa or Black Lives Matter, there would not be any kind of a trial.
Agreed.
So it's not like the justice system is working in an unbiased kind of a way. He is, he's like the bait that media is using to get more attention. That's, it's so evil what these people are doing. Like a lot of people didn't
even a lot of people
Yeah.
on the left are being shocked by how much they were misled in the months leading up to the trial by the media that they trusted.
And the media is still doing it.
And they're, yeah,
You see, the
throughout
judge
trial.
banned
MSNBC,
MSNBC
yes.
from the, and but yeah, I'm just shocked when you read CNN and you look at what they're saying about the trial, and then you actually watch the trial. There's a total disconnect. It's bizarro world.
If you look at the viewership of past Sunday, they release it every Sunday, is like the most viewed programs on each network. Like the first 15 or something like that, they're all Fox News. So the first MSNBC or CNN, they're not even getting like 800,000 views. Like Fox is like twice as many of them, or 3 times as many of them, the top shows. So it's not like when they do lie, they're trying to convince people who don't believe them to believe something. They're just talking to their own audience. You know, there is still like, I would imagine 25 up to 30% of people who are totally on board with everything that is happening and everything that Democrats are doing, everything Biden is doing. Like, yes, guns, there should not be guns in the hands of civilians. They just want a different kind of an America. They want like a European replicate, you know, a European society being replicated within, you know, the boundaries of this country. So the question is, what is the solution moving forward with a system that is like everybody's vote is basically equal? And if you vote that, yes, we're going to go towards the quote unquote right direction, and somebody else vote that, no, we're going to go towards the wrong direction, then it's just neutralized. And I don't think we can afford that anymore, considering how quickly technology is evolving.
Doesn't neutralize as much as flip every election.
Flip it to a different party?
Yeah, that's what we've been seeing in recent history. The party in power keeps getting voted out and replaced by the other party, which turns out to be no better. So they get voted out and replaced by the first party again.
But
like the vote's still neutralized, but somebody wins.
Isn't there a core problem, having been entrenched in the bowels of the beast, the government? It almost doesn't matter anymore who's in charge, what party wins, because the bureaucracy is driving the agenda.
Right. It's never mattered. Yeah. Like both parties are pretty much on the same side of keeping in power.
And if the bureaucracy wants to do something untoward, they hang it on whatever party's in power, and they take the blame, and the bureaucracy keeps steaming along doing whatever they want to do. And yeah, we almost, when you look at what Reagan did in the 80s, when he just said, all right, that's it, you're all fired. Unless we have someone with the stomach to do that, I don't know how to fix the bureaucracy. I mean, buddies and I who used to work there, we talk about this, and we're absolutely dumbfounded on how this could be fixed now, because they can take out any politician they want, as we've discovered, you know, with the Russiagate and anything else that went down there. The bureaucracy is quite capable of neutering any political change.
Well, the solution is Bitcoin. It's very clear.
Yeah, but look at what Congress is doing now. They're talking about it, instituting a centralized.
Yeah, but Ted
Bitcoin
Cruz at the same time is writing a bill that is going to undo the crypto part of that. Yeah,
oh, nice.
And by the
even if they come up with a centralized digital currency, it's not going to be able to compete.
Well, I think I agree with you, David. Absolutely, but that won't stop them.
Well, they're free to go ahead.
Exactly. And it's not going to be only the Fed. It's going to be Facebook. China has its own centralized currency. And all of the shit coins, new shit coins, basically, which would be CBDCs, they have to compete with Bitcoin, which is how many years? 11 years ahead of them. and does not have any requirement that they're having, and it's getting better every day. They're developers from all around the world.
Yeah, but
so what are they going to do about it? Miami just became the first city to give the residents of Miami Bitcoin dividend. That dude is like all in with Bitcoin. State of Wyoming, the senator of Wyoming has laser eyes. She's like all in Bitcoin. So, I think it's way too far gone for anybody to be able to do anything. But obviously, they're not just going to let it go, because all of this crap that they're coming up with, that, it's used for environment, it's getting warmer because of Bitcoin.
I was just going to say, that's the climate kids are now on board with Bitcoin. It's going to destroy the planet.
Let them be on board, because El Salvador, they're mining Bitcoin with a volcano. So, this is a different kind of a game, and bureaucracy cannot catch up with this game, because this game is agile, open source, and truly decentralized. People are from all around the world who have a stake in it. But at the same time, it's not like they're just going to let it go. So I think the solution is to accept that bureaucracy has won already. The establishment has won. And this goes beyond bipartisan kind of a deal. It has nothing to do with Democrat and Republican. It's literal deep state. It has won.
Agreed.
And so all we have to do is just throw sand in its engine until it just collapses under the weight of its own bureaucracy.
Well, a bunch of us talked about, if all of us just went back to cash in the short term, we just stopped using our credit cards.
I don't have a credit card.
Whenever we're out on the street.
I don't have a credit card. My credit score is stellar.
I want to hear about how
if you don't have a credit card, the bureaucracy is going to be looking at why. What are you doing? Because obviously you're doing something untoward, right?
So if we went back to cash, how's that going to help?
It would just, because the whole system now is snowballing into using their digital equivalent, centralized digital. And the whole data model of selling the data of what's being sold and who's buying it. And that, they're making a lot of money off that. So if everyone are buying with cash, first of all, there's not enough cash to go around. That could be an initial problem, but it would just break what they're trying to do. It would break what the financial institutions are trying to do.
But financial
right
institutions are the place that cash is coming from. So they can't dump like what they're doing. Like, I think like 35% of the entirety of US dollar has been printed in the past year. 35% of all of it. They just dumped. They airdropped it on the world. Like, there you go.
So if the U.S. isn't because Canada, no one buys anything in a store. You never see cash being used anymore.
Very seldom, yeah.
So that would really upset the apple cart and maybe open the door for Bitcoin and those things then to step in. But as long as we're using the existing digital way of buying things, why bother with Bitcoin? That's the feedback I'm getting from people.
Well, because Bitcoin is like you have gold in your phone that you can use it to pay for different kind of stuff, and the value of it is not collapsing like dollar. People will be forced, I'm afraid. They're going to be forced to learn how to work with Bitcoin when the value of dollar, for example, has dropped so badly that it's just unrecognizable. Already gas is up like 50%.
Oh, it's unbelievable. We're at $1.50 a liter here.
Right. So those cash.
So times four. In
cash that people could be dealing with, the value of them is being determined by this entire system. So you can use cash, but the value of your $10 today is not going to be the same tomorrow. It's going to be lower. And the day after that, it's going to be lower. Then it's going to get lower. Then it's going to get lower. So what's the point of that? That's why houses are so expensive right now. If you have a property and want to sell it, you can sell it for like twice the price. because of inflation. All the prices are like so high.
Right. No, I'm not saying using cash as a solution of any kind. I see it more as a disruptor to what the institutions are trying to do right now. They're trying to come up with their option to cryptocurrency in their own way. And I just had a friend who's retired, used to be in insurance business, send me an email saying, Wally, better make sure you update your will to include your cryptocurrency. And I thought, well, isn't that an insightful into people don't understand what cryptocurrency is? I just sent him a note back saying anyone that has my private key owns the cryptocurrency. So why would I want to share that with the government for, you know, death tax and all that stuff? But again, it's how do you break that perception of what it is? I don't think people get it yet because that's why I'm saying we're so ensconced in the whole digital world of our current banking system and how that exists and works, which is environmentally neutral, clearly, because their computers run on sunshine and rainbows. But yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. I don't have an answer. It's just, and maybe this spring coming up when the housing market and everything goes belly up, and as we have another big downturn in the economy. If you look at what's happening in China right now, I mean, that's all going pear-shaped. If you can believe what, you know, I tend to go to the South Asia news, and I know they have a dislike for China, so I take what they say with a grain of salt. But the footage of the riots that are going on in the smaller towns and stuff, people protesting throughout China, the shortages, they don't have fuel, they don't have heat, they don't have electricity, and then the corruption in the real estate markets there, that's all coming home to roost. So that will make what happened with, you know, Bear Stearns in 2008 look like a church picnic, one might expect. I don't know. Not being an expert in any of that, but it looks pretty ominous. So if that happens, I think that would be a huge opener for a Bitcoin and looking to, as you say, to place your money and your investment somewhere that won't depreciate.
Yeah, that's why I celebrate the inflation. So just drive more people to Bitcoin, which will raise the price.
You see, this is the thing about truth with capital T, because if you expand the context within which we're talking about all these things, then good and bad become meaningless, because you can say, well, inflation is terrible on its own, but if it's leading to revolutionizing the finance world and therefore the rest of life with Bitcoin, then inflation was not necessarily a bad thing, you know, and it's endless. This stream is endless. So you just take a frame of it and make a decision. And, you know, it's this certainty. I tweeted something a couple of days ago that fundamentalist religions are going to make a comeback because people need a degree of certainty. Michael Flynn was saying that if we have one country under God, we need to have one religion under God. And it's like, it's, you know, it's, we kind of called it on this podcast, the other religions are going to make a comeback.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think just watching the career and what the years of, you know, with Jordan Peterson, what he's been through and why people are listening to him. And it's because this meeting has been upgraded by the host and now includes unlimited minutes. Okay.
I didn't do anything, but thank you, CCP.
Thank you.
Yes. Wait a minute.
Well, did you see the latest Jordan Peterson podcast?
The warning?
Doing these. I didn't see that.
The one where he had Saifuddin Amusa, the author of the Bitcoin Standard.
I haven't. It's on my queue to watch. I haven't watched it. Is it good?
It is wonderful watching Peterson get orange pilled in real time.
Oh, nice!
You can watch his mind be blown. It's great to watch. He just he can't believe how radical it is to separate money from state. He can't believe how Bitcoin mining is actually good for the environment and frees up isolated resources and allows you to monetize sources of electricity that are off the grid. Like he kind of bought into the fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the environmentalists. And then he sees now that the truth is the opposite.
Oh, I'll have to watch that. That'll be
fun. Yeah, it's very fun to watch. Highly recommended.
Yeah, environmentalists, most of them, I would argue, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They just...
Well, there's a two-syllable word, and the last syllable, I think, is the most applicable part of that. Not enviro, but mentalists. Yes, they are. Well, you look at what Scotland, the Edinburgh, that last summit. I mean, the wheels are falling off. And I took the time and I went to the UN and read what the UN Charter says. And it ain't anything that the media is talking about. I mean, they essentially say we have a long-term rise in temperature. Well, we all know that. I mean, we're still coming out of a glacial age. But that the imminent destruction of mankind is certainly not on the table. And that's what it's amazing to watch everyone buy into that.
No, it's just we are being held back by a small group of people who are probably among the most incompetent people on this planet, and they're leeches. They don't produce anything. They just, monopolize in the political power. And yes, they've been boiling the frog for a long time, but then Brexit and Trump happened and they freaked them out, and they realized that they don't have much time. And, internet, they couldn't do much about it to shut it down. They tried. They're still trying. And, that's why they're getting more coercive. They're getting more violent.
Well, the new laws in Canada are really bizarre. That you can now be charged for something you say on the internet that's against the policy of the government. It's beyond that. It's the new legislation that they've just passed now, the new bills. They can walk into your emails and anything and hold you accountable. I mean, it's in effect in the UK. The police have come to arrested people for emails,
Australia too.
Contents of emails. Yeah. So, I mean, you really are living in the land of the free still down there.
But there's been no cases in Canada, has there?
Not yet, but most of the judiciary is on board. I know my friend is stepping down now because he can't tolerate what's going on.
It is crazy, especially when it's being pushed by government that got 31% of votes, even in that rigged system.
Oh, 33%.
33%. I apologize.
Yeah, it is a bizarre system of government in that regard,
absolutely.
Isn't it? It's just, the
only thing that has kept America so far is because there are like 400 million guns in this country. So they really want to take the guns away because state monopoly on violence is even better than state monopoly on finance. You can force people to do whatever you want them to do.
Well, our government's doubled down on that again and want to get rid of it. And they keep talking about the horrible crimes and all this going on. And the two things I found interesting is when you go on into the federal government websites and the RCMP websites, there's no data since 2016, which I find interesting. Why is that? But anyways, if you look at the 2016 data, 600 people died at the hands of firearms in Canada. 250 of those were gang members shooting each other. 140 of those were native reserves, people shooting each other. And the rest are crimes and a handful of domestics. But I mean, 638 million people is not a big number at all. That would warrant, taking everyone's rights away. It's quite bizarre. But again, you don't ever see those numbers on the media or talked about. And the general perception is guns are bad.
Right. I mean, it would be interesting to see how the dynamic will be changed as 3D printing and 3D printable weapons become more mainstream. And it seems like this adoption of technology is far faster in countries that are technologically behind. Like, look at even Iran or Azerbaijan, Armenia, Yemen. They're using kamikaze UAVs and they change the entire dynamic of power in that region, because you make like a $500 drone and you weaponize it, you put a bomb on it, and the only way that, for example, Saudi Arabia can shoot one of them down is with a rocket that costs like $500,000. How can you maintain the expense? And so, like, Israel is coming with new technology. This is what I'm saying. When I'm saying there is a plan, maybe, I'm not necessarily talking about the planetary plan. I'm talking about some kind of a plan that we might not even know. Like what Einstein said, that all the forces we experience in this universe is like the tail of a lion. The body of a lion is somewhere else. Right? That's a different kind of a revolution that could happen and fundamentally change everything. That, hey, who sets the narrative for what can be researched scientifically? Because there are people who have, interest in certain kind of topics, in certain kind of field to get the grant money. But now that we can crowdsource that kind of a process, what is the point of having conventional universities? I remember Jordan Peterson's budget got cut down by the government in Canada, and they crowdsourced it, and he raised like 6 times the amount, 7 times the amount, something like that. And then people are engaged, right? Because it's voluntary participation rather than, oh, you're forced to participate because, we have to be a society somehow.
Well, I mean, Peter Thiel I haven't heard much from him lately, but he spoke out very vehemently that don't send your kid to university. There are much better options to be educated.
Peter Thiel recently said that AGI isn't happening. That's the last that I heard of him.
AGI.
Yeah. Artificial General Intelligence.
Well, we don't even have that in the population. How can we expect that from machines? Did I say that out loud? Yeah. Well, there's that new university being opened in Austin, and it'll be interesting to see if that can make a go of it.
Of AGI?
The reaction to that's been pretty funny.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
it's kind of like the vestiges of the IDW got together and decided to create a new university, but they're not going to be accredited for some time. So first few cohorts of classes, we're just going to pay for the knowledge, not the credits. But actually, the Peterson and Amus had a really interesting discussion about universities and credentials at the end of the podcast. I learned that Peterson has resigned his position at U of T. He just can't see the benefit of teaching dozens of students when he could go online and teach millions for free.
And, barely teaching at, conventional university, because at least like 1/3 of your time is being wasted talking to people who are protesting something. Somebody's offended by someone.
Well, Peterson said that the great time waster in an academic job is applying for grants. That a Canadian professor will spend like 40% of their time on grant proposals. Not research, not teaching, grant proposals. It's just bureaucracy.
UFT just torpedoed some proposal in Toronto, didn't they? Because they didn't do it according to the criteria that they wanted. There was some controversy I just caught in the news. Anyway, sorry.
You know, Orson Welles,
well,
the famed director and writer and all that, his last interview, I think it was like 2 weeks before he died, he also said that the biggest time waster for him was looking to raise money. And, you know, I think it's happening cross-board for entrepreneurs. This also has been the case before crypto. And crypto is kind of solving that as well, that you don't have to go and, you know, get on your knees in front of very few like VCs and you're like, just please give me money and I give you like 50% of my company or whatever. You know, you just launch an ICO or NFT or whatever.
Yeah. I just joined a DAO yesterday, the Constitution DAO. Have you heard of this one? So they, in something like 48 hours, raised $20 million to bid on an original copy of the U.S. Constitution at the Sotheby's auction. And it's happening tonight. I don't know how it turned out.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, anything can be tokenized and anything can be NFT. So, you know, that's another thing that it might take people a little bit to get the impact of it and significance of it, but once they get it, I think it's going to explode even further. It's already exploded.
Well, I know a good an acquaintance who's a musician in Ottawa, and she's done the whole Nashville and songwriting in LA, and she just crowdsources her albums.
Yeah.
Now. So 2 years ahead, she starts and she gets all the money. She has a target and she gets the money she needs. She'll get to $30,000 together, and she'll put an album together. It's perfect. A really good idea. And the studios must just hate that.
Well, all gatekeepers, you know, all the middlemen, all the third parties are eventually going to be affected, because this is disruption of trust. That, hey, I don't need to listen to you or go through you to do what I want to do. I can do it myself directly with my audience. And, you know, you don't really need to have millions of people. You can have like 2,000 people who are very committed to what you're doing and totally make a living out of it, right?
Yeah.
The problem is the third parties and gatekeepers and all those people, because they don't want to give up their power. I don't think they have any other choice, but they're gonna fight all the way. You know, it's all about power. David, what do you think about Peter Thiel saying AGI is probably not going to happen?
I'd like more details. He's a smart guy. He probably is thinking it won't happen in a certain time frame. I don't know if he offered the time frame. I'd be surprised if he said it will never happen or it's impossible.
Yeah, he was saying that.
But he might be saying it's not going to happen in our lifetime, like in the next 50 or 80 years or something like that. I think he's wrong.
Right.
if that's what he's saying.
I mean, another question is, how can we rely completely on our definition of AGI? Like, we expect certain kind of what we consider to be intelligence to emerge as a result of a process that become AGI. But it could happen in a completely different way that we can't even comprehend, right?
Possibly, but it could happen in a way that's pretty clear. That it's smart. Like if it starts running its own DAO on Web3 and making a lot of money and hiring people to do its bidding, that's a pretty good clue.
Yeah, if we know it's AGI, because it could be like a avatar influencer, you know, because we're headed towards a place that you can't really You can't really tell the difference. Right now, you can have virtual avatar as, you know, as your presentation as an influencer. So like news people are gonna, little by little, they become virtual. You know, it's again more predictable kind of positions. And then at some point they will be driven by like AIs that, you know, they just give you weather, but they're so realistic that you can't really tell whether or not they're humans or AI.
It could easily communicate with humans only through text, like email or Discord or some other textual interface. And it would be impossible to tell it from a super intelligent human. You don't need to deepfake that, really.
Yeah.
Not in a video sense. You don't have to show a face or anything. It could just be a very smart agent on the other end of a textual interface.
Yeah.
Like if you got a job offer through email for $1 million a year, would you take it? It just says, keep doing what you're doing, but wants to support you and maybe give you some editorial direction here and there.
Sort of like the CPP?
Yeah, or CIA. Or AGI.
Or that, yes.
AGI is a new agency.
Yes. That's right. Yep. Well done. Yes.
Or if it's just writing software, it doesn't need to show a face.
No. This anonymous economy, the Balaji actually talks about that a lot. I mean, there really is...
Yeah, I really like
he's
him.
Awesome. It's like totally spot on every single time.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
So yeah, what is even the point of revealing your identity? You know, if you want to get a coding job, you just share your GitHub. That's it. You're hired or you're not hired. What difference does it make who you are?
Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're one person or a team of people or...
Yeah, so the solution to cancel culture is not to ban politics, is to ban office work and work, you know, at home without revealing your true identity. Deliver the work, the work, and there is a smart contract that is going to release whatever you're supposed to be getting once your work was delivered.
Except managers in Ottawa for the government's heads are exploding because they can't walk by someone's desk and poke at
They can't get an acoustic guitar and a bowl and start practicing how they can make money on the streets. They have tough competition ahead of them.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Those are really the worst people that our society, this Western civilization, has produced. Managerial position.
Well, yeah, middle managers.
Yeah, man. Like, dude, go fuck yourself. Who the fuck do you think you are telling me what to do? Like, you're fatter than I am, you're uglier than I am, and you're definitely not as smart as I am. You're just a fucking asshole with a badge that says manager. Now, your parents must be proud, but I can't care less. So,
well, we tried to offer up our little, you know, bunch of tech guys, our little contribution to International Women's Day, and that is we coined the term self-lubricating, uncaring tyrants to describe our management.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what they are. That deserves to be on a t-shirt and given to those people.
That's right.
So yeah, we're getting rid of them, and you know, the biggest manager of it all is the government. So,
but how do you unpack, you know, the FBI and the CIA? And because, you know, there's lots of good, competent people in the rank and file.
Leadership. It's the top leadership.
Yeah.
And it's 1% of that 1%. Like 1% of the people, they're in the bureaucracy and in the cult. And then there's 1% of that 1% who are running the narrative, basically. And they went out of control. You know what they did with Project Veritas? Just raiding, you know, their homes and getting into their phones, leaking information to New York Times. And you know, as David says, a lot of leftists, they're even like, what's going on? Like, we've gone maybe a little too far here. You know, ACLU, I think, came out in defense of Project Veritas. But I think it's crystal clear for people on the right, actual right, not corporate right, establishment right, that the system is just, you know, it's flawed against them and it's rigged against them culturally and politically and economically. You know, like Michael Flynn again, like I think Bank of America, it was Bank of America, they shut down their credit cards on a bunch of his accounts because they didn't want to associate themselves with him. They say it's bad for the brand of Bank of America. Well, you know, just screw this system. You create an alternative with your crypto and with Bitcoin and just, you know, live as if you don't depend on these people. That's why a lot of states are, you know, doubling down on state coming before the federal government, because the power of federal government comes from the state. You don't have a mandate without having the states.
Yeah, and well, and they're really, and the federal government's trying to upend that big time. It seems to me, they want to exert power.
The same people who want to do it during the Civil War. You know, Lincoln was a Republican. Now, some people can say that, well, the war was illegal. The war was illegal, but that's a bigger argument that are laws coming prior to ethics and morality, or ethics and morality are coming prior to laws, and who is there to define either of those things?
So what was the story with there were people being shipped to Florida from the Mexican
they're being
border?
Shipped all over the place.
And the states don't
the
have
governor here, he's like, we're going to send them back. We're not going to accept them. Yeah, man, they're pushing people way too far. And if things explode, it's going to explode really badly. So I don't know what's going to happen, but their approval ratings is down, you know, to like high 20s. Congress's approval rating is like low 20s consistently. And at the same time, they're trying to pass this massive bill that they have, Build Back Better bill. It's just a joke. If they do that, it's a very different kind of a game, because it's almost impossible to undo any of those entitlement programs and all that they're putting. Basically,
didn't they pass that one? What was that photo up about where they were saying get it done, and Biden was signing something?
Well, it was an infrastructure bill Biden signed, but this is Build Back Better. That this is basically a Green New Deal on steroids. It expands on government programs. You know, it will raise dumber kids and more dependent adults to the government. And it's cradle to grave kind of it's totally socialization of America. So that actually is supposed to happen or not happen tonight. So people on the right, this is what I'm saying, that they're making alliances around this ethos of Judeo-Christian West. And you know, I guess we'll see. Did any of you guys listen to my episode with Jason Giorgiani? Because he has some interesting ideas.
I haven't heard. No.
No, you tell.
Oh, Jason Giorgiani is he was a co-founder of Alt-Right Corporation. Came out, wrote a bunch of books, including Prometheism. And he had another one, Closer Encounters. It's about UFOs and aliens and all that. But his thought basically is that certain people have made a choice to break United States, basically. So you don't have any national identity, which is exactly what's been happening in Canada. You know, the dude said it himself. It's like a globalist plan. America is the last barrier. So if that would be successful, then you got to wonder what's going to happen, because dollar is going to crash. A lot of people are saying the dollar is going to crash anyways. It's not going to be a reserve currency of the world anymore. So we're in the crisis, in that the fourth turning, the fourth turning thesis, in the crisis phase of it. And, you know, on the other side of this abyss could be golden days, or it could be total hell. Who knows? Right?
Yeah, I have a lot of those concerns, and I look at Europe, and if I were in the UK, I would count my blessings that I got the heck out of the EU, because that's government on steroids over the EU now. There's a whole cohort in Brussels that aren't even elected that are running the show, and it sure feels like, but who would be the actors that would like to break America? Yeah, that I read that study from MIT that was done in 2017, and they documented over 2.5 million people working for the CCP in China, and their job is to get on all the social media and all the email groups and everywhere and push an agenda around the world, and heavily push the agenda in the US. And you guys were talking about AGI. Well, a lot of that, you know, they're probably working on trying to weaponize that. So you would think that in the old days it was the KGB, but I think that it would really be to the advantage of the CCP if the US did come apart. So I could see a real strong influence there driving that. And then you have all the financial institutions that have bet the farm on China. I mean, Europe is just in over their head. I mean, from Italian governments who have gotten into bed with them on the Belt and Road to pay out their debts, to Germany, that has every industrial giant in Germany has bet the farm on setting up business in China, as the Japanese are now pulling out, you know, out of China in a big way. Most of the Chinese government, the Japanese government has said, given incentives to corporations to pull out of China. So they see the writing on the wall, but I think the big conglomerates out of Europe and you know, the Googles and the Amazons and everyone, they're left holding the bag now, because I don't think they had a contingency plan when the whole China thing didn't go the way they expected. You know, when the government walks into all the companies in China and says, no, we now own 51% of everything, we don't care where the company's origin is, well, that's a huge game changer, and that's pretty disruptive. So yeah, I see a whole bunch of different forces, as you point out, that want to dismantle and fragment the West, and they're succeeding, it would seem to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's far more the fault of the West than it's, you know, it's the fault of the CCP. Like, why wouldn't they have agents trying to spread propaganda in the West? Like, of course they do. You know, the problem is that people who are supposed to be leaders of the West, they're already in bed with China. They already have investments. And, you know, all their interest is for China to do good. There's a congresswoman from Virginia that she has, I think, like $1 million invested in Alibaba.
Yep.
So it's very corrupt, and the corruption has came to the surface. You know, I keep saying, man, Trump was a psychedelic. Trump was a psychedelic. Everybody tripped really, really hard on him. Everybody, you know, now are facing their demons, and demons are all unmasked, and it's just a matter of what are you going to do with it? You know, is this how you want to live your life, that you will be given a app on your phone, which is basically your new operating system, and everything else will run on that basis. And this operating system will work for as long as government confirm that you've received all the latest requirements, including vaccines and, you know, And then they give you, rewards as central bank digital currency. They give you a little bit of money here and there, which has an expiration date. So you can't like do anything else with it. You can't really keep it. You have to spend it by a certain amount of time. Otherwise, it will be expired. So this modern monetary theory would have worked great if there was the absence of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because they would have monopoly on, on the currency, and then they would just print indefinitely. That's the idea that they have. And I think a lot of them who is still pushing this idea, they just don't understand Bitcoin, or they think that they can't control Bitcoin. But maybe, quantum computing comes and, like some people are saying, completely change the game against Bitcoin. I don't think like with a technology that will be disruptive, a solution wouldn't be developed in its counter. But that's one of the arguments that is being made, that quantum computer is going to make it obsolete. I don't think that's the case.
I think quantum computers are hyped a bit. David would know more, I think.
Yeah, like even if somebody invented a quantum computer tomorrow that could break the encryption in short order, Bitcoin would just release a fork that used another encryption algorithm that was quantum computer resistant, and we'd go on. Yeah, so it might be down for a day or two as they put in the new encryption algorithm, but it's not going to destroy Bitcoin. Bitcoin cannot be destroyed.
Yeah, also the argument of EMP, electromagnetic pulse, if they like explode something above the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Is it above the atmosphere? Yes, above the atmosphere to affect the grid, electricity grid. The moment that grid comes back up, Bitcoin network is back online.
Yeah.
So the argument is whether or not an entity can shut down electricity and maintain that dark mode of no electricity for a long amount of time. I don't think that would be the case. Even though some people, again, make the argument that there are interests who want to basically monopolize in the singularity level technology while keeping the rest of people in this very deindustrialized kind of a state, that people have farms and people just pray and go to church and all that. And those people, even though they don't believe, for example, in people like Jordan Peterson or Alexander Dugin, they are promoting their work because it helps the society to move towards that direction, away from technological adoption and this ascendance towards a more simple life of farming and community and family and religion and those kind of things. Interesting game is going on.
Well, again,
it is stopping people from moving to farms or small villages and opting out of modern society. But when they do that, they also opt out of the modern market. I mean, they will encounter poverty like we had a couple hundred years ago, but that might be okay for them. It's not going to affect the rest of us.
Yeah, they don't see it that way.
Well, we had
they don't see it that they see it that the market should accept them as they are. But my argument is, even if you look at the Amish people who are being pointed out as some kind of an example of look how simple life can be and how peaceful without the use of modern technology, right? But where are they living? Amish live in United States. They are protected by layers after layers of people who are using the highest level of modern technology to protect that county, to protect that state, to protect the borders of United States. And U.S. military is, like protecting this land and the integrity of this territory. It is only because of that that you're able to live life without the use of modern technology. Otherwise, you know, move some Amish to northern Pakistan and put them in some tribal land and like just see how long you can live a happy, peaceful life without the modern technology. Not that long, dude. Maybe about a week.
So isn't this more about decentralizing though? Because our population has gone up at least 25-30% because of COVID up here in, you know, north of Toronto now, 4 hours north of Toronto, because people have moved up here. They bugged out of Toronto. A lot of people are, you know, we've got fiber up here and decent internet, and so they're working from here. So a lot of people are remote. I know a couple of people have moved up to Elliott Lake, and they're working remotely. Their jobs in Toronto. They're in the insurance business, and a lot of companies are supporting that because it means they can drop the huge cost of their real estate of providing desks and work areas in a building. So that's happening, but that's in concert with the technology.
Yeah, it's adoption, but it also leaves certain people behind. For example, the person who or people who are in charge of cleaning up those massive corporate buildings in downtown Toronto.
Yes.
Right. If work is going to be mobile, what's going to happen to those buildings? What's going to happen to concept of cities? And how much investment has been made, both psychologically and financially, by the system in order to concentrate people in smaller places that depends on their services more and more. So they can be surveilled. So they can be dependent on using, as you said, credit cards. Or they'll be forced to get loans and mortgages. And, you know, most people are already living on this social credit system. It's just that it hasn't been, you know, expanded to the level that they want to expand it to, which is basically every aspect of your life. So yeah, decentralization is absolutely the key. It's just a matter of adoption of it and infrastructure of it.
And if affluent people leave the city, then people that could not previously afford to move to the city will be able to move to the city.
Right. So bang on, David, bang on. Toronto is gotten ahead of itself in terms of what it can do and what it can deliver, I think, to the citizens that are there now. So, and a lot of it, I'm guessing, is a lot of foreign money came into buying property and driving the prices up. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was my perception. So this would equalize some of that now if people are decentralizing and moving away. So I see that as a good thing. I'm not all that pleased that all these people have arrived on my doorstep here, because I was kind of liking the isolation. But on the other hand, it means work. It means more prosperity for the people that are here, and it has in the past been one of the poorest townships in Ontario. So I think there'll be a long-term benefit, but change is tough. It's going to take a while to sort of balance it all out.
Yeah, and while people are trying to balance it all out, technology has advanced tenfold. And so what are they going to do then? They're going to go further and further into smaller communities?
Well, no, I don't think this is an escape from technology at all. I think this is an escape from a city that's not financially viable.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
The pay scales are not keeping up with what it costs to live there. And I think the fear of COVID and infection, and in Toronto, I think was a real push last year why a lot of people came up. And I think a lot of people looked at, well, they had real property already. Where do I want to live? So I think it was more moving away from something they were afraid of, or something that was unsavory, or something that wasn't economically make sense anymore. So capitalize on the money you have in the city, liquidate and move up here and buy something for a third of the cost of what it would cost, in the city. So if you can swing your business to do that, I think, and a lot of people were able to, I don't think it's a move away. I don't think it's a back to the nature thing or, back to the farm thing at all. Certainly not up here because you can't farm the land up here. It's rocks. Rocks, if you want to mine uranium, you'd be all set. But other than that.
You're careful not renting out to Iranians then.
No.
Iranians will be mining uranium.
Uranium. Yes, right. Great play on words there. Yes, good one.
Well, I mean, similar things have been happening here. A lot of people are leaving California for Texas, leaving New York for Florida. Basically getting out of blue states, blue cities, urban areas to either purple or red areas. And interestingly enough, a lot of people were saying that, well, they're going to change the balance of, for example, Florida, that voted like overwhelmingly for Trump, even though the number of registered Democrats here has been consistently higher than Republicans. But for the first time ever in the history of recent history of this state, number of registered Republicans surpassed registered Democrats. So we also have a governor election coming next year. So Democrats have been running two people for about a year to test the water, basically, see how they're doing. And none of them were doing good at all. So they're introducing the third person just a few months away from the election because the first two couldn't get any kind of attraction. So something fundamental is changing among a lot of people who would have probably said that I'm an independent or moderate Democrat, because these insane people who are in charge of this system right now, they just gone overboard and people are blown away. A lot of people have like regrets and stuff about voting for Biden. But, again, they're not going to give up power, and they have enough people to make some kind of a mob and like, well, this is actually the right way to do it. Yes, it is a moral position to say that if you're white, you just, you're just messed up. You're just an evil person because that's what they're teaching kids. This is why a lot of people are, they're rising up, a lot of parents. So everything is changing. But I don't think our policymakers and the system of governance is prepared at all to address those kind of changes. And the changes are going to get, more and more radical and more significant because technology is evolving exponentially.
Well, that's my understanding is that's one of the strengths of the U.S. because of the independence of the states. People will go to where it makes sense to them, and that will set out an agenda for the entire country then.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like this. And the main problem is the federal government has gotten too big and too powerful. But now states are, some states, not all states, but some states are standing their ground, basically. Like, we're not going to do it. We're not going to deal with this. So like in Florida, they immediately banned vaccine mandates or vaccine passports, not only by like companies, but by like government stuff, but also by businesses. So, it's not ideal that you need to have laws in order to be able to live like some kind of a life with pursuit of liberty. But what else are you going to do? These people are insane. They just want to take over everything. They want to keep you in masks, 2 masks, 5 masks. They're like in California, they had a guidance that it's okay to take your masks when you're taking a bite of your food, but you have to put your mask back on between bites. And a lot of people are following that. And like, what do you expect then from a system that these people vote in?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense to me to mandate this stuff. If you can't put a solid case forward why to do any of these things in this age of science and a compelling case forward that and people are willing to adopt it, well, then you've already failed. And to impose it is going to backfire, I think. And I think I think there's going to be a backlash in Austria for what they've done. And I just don't understand why the recall of the governor of California, how that fell on its face. And I would have thought people would have seen through what was going on in California with Newsom and the crew. But
Too
he
far
got in
gone.
again. I found that too far gone. And Hollywood behind him, I
Well,
guess.
Tim Draper,
As
yeah,
for mandates, haven't you noticed that there's a good portion of the population that will follow every
yeah,
mandate that comes down, no matter how ridiculous it is? Not only will they follow it, they will enforce it themselves on their fellow
yeah, on
citizens.
behalf of the
You
state.
don't need on behalf of the state. Yeah, most of the enforcers are other people.
Yep. So what?
So I'm not nearly as optimistic as Wally here that the people will rebel. I think no matter what the state does, there will be statists and authoritarians that follow along and enforce it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was growing up in Iran, Khomeini asked kids to spy on their parents and on their teachers, and teachers spying on their students. Basically, playing people against each other, and people are more than willing to do that. Like I said earlier, masks for a lot of people has the same purpose that swastikas had for a lot of people during the 30s. You know, it's not that everybody who wore swastika were full-on Nazi, is that they just wanted to be part of the system. They want to be part of the accepted elite.
Right? It becomes part of a uniform. It's a coalition signal more than a
Absolutely.
mask.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting in Florida that you see some people wear masks, some people don't wear masks. And everybody's getting along. And it's really interesting, especially in South Florida. There are a lot of people who are coming from like Cuba and Venezuela. So these people have a very good understanding of communism and how it creeps in. So I think I mentioned that in one of our talks that Trump's rally in Miami, which was 2 days before the election, it was not called the Trump rally. It was called the rally against communism. So, you know, they're not fooling around. They know what's going on, and so they're very accepting. All the Latinos here, and you know, for as long as there are some examples, I think the spirit of liberty and humanity is very strong, especially when it gets to your kids. That your kids are being forced by people to do certain things that is jeopardizing their liberty, their freedom, their, you know, your right over their protection. And people are, at least here, I don't know what's like how they're going to deal with it in Canada with all this like CRT stuff in the school system. But here there are a lot of parents, they're waking up to it and they're standing up to it. You know, it doesn't matter that they're being labeled as domestic terrorists by the Department of Justice, which is just so insane. But they're not giving up. It's about their kids. So I think they overreach, people on the left, far left, and that's why they're getting violent, and they're getting like very obviously coercive and obviously, you know, very overt kind of aggression.
Yeah, I'm with David in terms of Canada. I don't see Canada being able to pull that off. I mean, I certainly hear a lot of people, and people I talk to are not happy with the situation. But certainly my generation is going, what the hell? What can we do anyway? Let someone
You've
else
given
sort
up?
it out, and they're
Your
just gonna
generation?
given up. Yeah, I think so. I think I've seen that big time.
I see.
Um,
I think a lot of people have given up because they're just tired.
yeah. And that's probably the scariest aspect of this whole COVID thing, that it's drained a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. and our society is vulnerable right now.
Yeah, it's also that
to
1%
malevolence.
of Canadians would be around 300,000 people. 1% of Americans would be around 30 million people. No, 3 million people. So it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So 3 million, people,
and we have,
if they're hungry and they're armed, is not a good kind of a perspective for any kind of a government to push people towards that. 300,000 people who are not armed, it's a very different dynamic.
But if things go pear-shaped economically, there's going to be a lot of people in Toronto that are going to suffer. Because I perceive a lot of people in Toronto have been underwritten by the government financially and are dependent on them. That can't keep going. So, yeah.
So there's a woman that Biden has nominated here to be in charge of currency, that she wants to end private banking. And she's saying that everybody's account should be with the Fed, basically, with Federal Reserve. And she's from Soviet Union. Like, it's just a comical. She was part of a group called the Young Communists or something. It's just insane. But I was thinking, a lot of people obviously are speaking out against it, and I don't think that that's going to happen. But I was just thinking, if this is supposed to happen in Canada, first of all, who would know? And second, who's going to stop this process? If they say, for example, that equivalent of Federal Reserve in the US and Canada, whatever it may be, like Central Bank of Canada.
Bank of Canada.
Bank of Canada is going to take over all banks. And so all your mortgages, your credit card debts and all that now is owned by Bank of Canada, which is going to buy it from you in effect, right? So Bank of Canada is going to become a partial owner of your property that you owe some money towards, right? It can be your credit card, it can be your house or anything like that. Well, isn't that nationalization of property?
Yes, exactly what China's done. That's what the CCP did to the Chinese people. They don't own anything. The government owns, in the end, owns everything.
That's the core of communism, that there is no private property.
You'll own nothing.
You'll be happy.
You'll be happy.
Yeah.
I thought that was a joke, and then it turns out the World Economic Forum actually sent that message.
Yep. Yeah, they also said that Earth benefited from lockdowns. And they did a video about it, that how beneficial it was to cities for people to stay home and not use cars and all that. I'm sure that they're convinced they're doing the good thing and they're doing the right thing. That's another level of understanding for people, that if you disagree this fundamentally with someone, you have to consider that it's not that they know or they think they're evil. They think they're at the right.
No, they never do.
No, they think that you're the bad guy who is standing up against this progress and the path to utopia. How dare you? Right? And once you're brainwashed with that, it's a religion. It's an ideology. I mean, there's no way you can convince them otherwise.
Well, I mean, the Tower of Babel is such a great narrative on what's going on right now. People, and when Moses came down from the mound and saw everyone had built gold idols and were worshiping them, if you lose your faith in anything more important than yourself, and you make yourself the center of the universe, then you can people aren't humble enough to say, I may not be right. There's a whole bunch of pieces, as Peterson always says, it's complicated, and don't think you can fix it. Yeah. But there are a whole group of people have bought into this whole environmental religion, social religion, the collectivism. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And we're talking about my generation's given up. Well, my generation caused this. I mean, my generation spearheaded this in the 60s
Right.
and 70s. When I look back at the 70s now, I see what's happening right now, a mirror image of what happened in the 70s, economically, financially, socially. It's frightening. Only this time it's global. Last time it was North America. I don't know how you unpack that. I find it really upsetting when I look
How do you
back.
connect the dots? What did you see in the 70s that is being recapitulated now?
The whole movement, the whole social justice movement, everything. I mean, the U.S. was turned upside down. The Vietnam War was a catalyst. The environmental movement. I remember all the rallies that we have to shut down nuclear power, because nuclear power was bad. It was evil. It was going to destroy the planet. Meanwhile, the oil industry is funneling all that money into those groups to help them, to wind them up, to fight against it, because they didn't want nuclear power to be running things. Was that the oil industry and the petrochemical industry would have lost out on big time. There were all these things going on. We had the oil embargo out of the Middle East crank up the prices. We now have the failure of China economically that looks like it's going to hit home. We had Jimmy Carter. We have Biden. I mean, the parallels are uncanny. And we had the whole Nixon thing going on. We had the whole Trump thing going on. And again, they aren't 100% equal, but the similarities I find just quite appealing when I'm looking at what happened in the 70s and what's happening now. I remember all the lineups all around the U.S. People couldn't get gasoline. They had their cars, because another group of individuals were looking out for themselves, as the CCP is. I mean, yeah, those are off the top of my head, the things that come to mind.
So this woman nominee of being in charge of currency wants to end private banking. She also said that oil and gas companies going bankrupt is actually a good thing because climate change.
Yeah. I caught that clip. Couldn't believe it.
Like, how did these people even get into power? That's what's so disturbing.
Oh, they've been in power in different levels. It's just that they're coming to the surface now.
Well, all my cohort of social collectivists ended up as teachers and professors because they didn't have what it takes to make a living. And they've really doubled down. I mean, you look at that. I mean, really realistically, the whole socialist movement. I was telling David, I discovered Hayek and The Road to Serfdom, and that is beyond epiphany. I mean, he just lays it out to a T. What's happened? You just listen to the narrative there and read what he says. It's exponentially worse now than he even thought it was going to be.
Published in the 40s?
55.
55.
Yeah, you're right, late 40s, and it reached North America. But what I found really disturbing is it hit North America in 55, and the outrage in North America against this book apparently was epic. The government, people all over the place wanted to get rid of this book because it was evil. And that's right in the middle of the McCarthy era. So there was already this huge polarity between academics and Hollywood wanting socialist and collectivism and socialism and the fight against the capitalists. And then if you roll that back even further, I mean, you look at Britain, collectivism was alive and well in Britain right back in the 20s already. And that's why Britain's a mess now, because government control of everything, and that hasn't ended well.
Well, one argument is that China fell to the CCP exactly because there were Marxists already within the U.S. government. So the pushback wasn't as strong as it should have been because China was an ally, leading to that point. But then it fell to the CCP because there were people Marxists in the U.S. government. And then after World War II, a lot of Nazis came to the U.S. government because Project Paperclip, that they brought all the, not all, but many of the high-ranked Nazis to boost American industries, including the space industry. That we went basically to the moon because of Nazis, and it gets rid of the moral high ground, but it also shines a light on a very cold, brutal practicality upon which all these systems work. And so I think for a lot of people, it's just dreamland, the kind of utopia that they're thinking about. That, it's like all these communists, so-called communists or Marxists on Twitter, these kids, they think like they're gonna farm collectively and then they're gonna go and write poetry, and it's just a ridiculous kind of worldview. That obviously, all these people that you were saying they became teachers and professors and all that, they just put that in their brain. And this is how they see the world. And if you argue with it, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's not like, let's have debates.
Yep.
This is what I was saying to Peter Boghossian when I had him on the podcast. He had the book, How to Have Impossible Conversations. I was like, dude, what will happen if they don't want to have conversations at all?
And that's where we're at.
They don't want to.
People
he
do
had
not.
to resign
there's
himself.
a huge cohort of people.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, yes, he just did. I saw that.
Yeah, he's gone to the University of Boston.
Oh, he has.
Yeah.
Okay, good for him. I listen. I quite often drop in on Gad Sad and watch what he's talking about and saying, and I'm quite astounded that Concordia hasn't dumped him yet.
Has he got tenure?
Because
I think he does.
So.
Yeah.
Not that it would ultimately matter. They would be like, oh, you're
No.
you're a hyper racist, and that goes against tenure position. So,
I mean, he is a person of color. He's Jewish, and he's a self-proclaimed Adonis. He has all those things going for him.
He's just a Nazi. He's a Jewish Nazi. So ignore everything he has to say. Making sense is white
like
supremacy,
Larry Elder,
man.
right?
Making sense is not good.
Yeah, isn't it just? But that, we joke about that, but that's a reality in a lot of
reality is a joke now. So that's how it is. We're living in Animal Farm.
No, we're living in Clown
World. Exactly.
Yes.
James Lindsay.
I thought because James Lindsay, but I thought Clown World was a joke. It turns out it's real.
Real. Absolutely. Yeah. We were mistaken thinking that it is not a clown world, that there is anything serious about it. And so once you recognize it's a clown world, you just laugh about it. I mean, what else can you do?
Exactly. That's kind of the position I take these days. Is it's also absurd. It's hilarious.
But friends that have moved here and immigrated from Venezuela are horrified.
Well, I mean, yeah,
they see what's happening. They see, as you mentioned, in Florida, they see what's happening in Canada, and they see a collective communist nightmare unfolding. And they're debating what to do. And the other option is Europe, but Europe's even worse off. So one can only keep our fingers crossed that at some point something changes in this country, but I don't know.
David, what were you going to say? You were going to say something.
Oh, the latest is my favorite Twitter fight is now between Bernie Sanders and Elon Musk. Fighting over the future of the space program, and was saying, I keep forgetting you're still alive.
Yes.
Well, what's Saunders saying?
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is saying that private citizens like Bezos and Musk should not be involved in setting the direction of the space program. That belongs to the American people and therefore the American government and therefore senators like Bernie Sanders, I guess.
Yeah, and wow. Congress has about 21% approval rating. Congress. That's supposedly
21%?
Represent the people, the American people, has 21% approval rating. So I think at any given situation, Elon Musk is far greater than the entirety of the U.S. Congress, but especially people like Bernie Sanders, who've done nothing throughout their lives, other than leeching out of taxpayers' money and saying in the beginning, millionaires and billionaires. And then he became a millionaire. He dropped the millionaires. Now it's only billionaires who has to pay the most taxes. Like Elon Musk probably should pay 0 taxes. Just keep doing what you're doing, dude. He single-handedly is advancing the human experience in all different. I just heard today that they're going to release Tesla phones that is going to work with Starlink. I'm like, hell yeah, man. What has Bernie Sanders done recently other than becoming like a flavor of an ice cream? Ben and Jerry. So the problem is people like Bernie Sanders who are throwing rocks and obstacles on the way of someone like Elon Musk to what? To give handouts to people that they require their votes.
I guess the other part of the discussion, though, is when you have companies like Amazon that own the government, then that becomes a problem as well. So there's stuff that has to be fixed, but destroying capitalism and private enterprise is not a solution.
How does Amazon own the government?
They have a huge influence on policy in the government.
But how?
By lobbying and funding.
I mean,
money.
Politicians doing influence peddling?
Agreed.
Corrupt politicians? I think
yes.
That's where if there's a problem there, it's in the politicians.
No, I agree where you're going, 100%, David. I agree with you. The root of the problem is the politicians and the government, and they're enabling, and the private wealthy corporations are taking advantage, just the way they did in the 1800s with the railways. I mean, it's the same kind of game going on. But that has to be on the table, right? And I think people are seeing that. They're seeing the influence peddling going on. They're seeing, what the hell was that? What the heck happened in Portland? I mean, how could anyone have witnessed what happened in Portland and not go, something is horribly, horribly broken here with the government, that was allowed to happen? So I think people are seeing all these things, and hopefully they're recognizing, as David pointed out, that the problem is not with capitalism, and the problem is with government and central planning and control that manifests. But the collectivists keep pointing at capitalists as the core of the problem when
I mean, of course they are. The Iranian government also is blaming Israel and United States for all their problems. For as long as you have an enemy, you don't have to take responsibility over your failures. So, and capitalism is fine in the crypto land. And the only example of free market that I can think of is darknet. Otherwise the rest of the markets are manipulated in one way or another.
I guess we were talking earlier, to bring it full circle, we were talking about tipping points in terms of moving to cryptocurrency. The whole stock market and the financial institutions that's going to be the legacy environment that has to sort of slide uh, and capitulate in some way. I mean, there's all sorts of solutions for central, for the financial and for the stock market that would lend themselves. But once it's turned into a crypto environment, then it's going to be much harder to gain.
This is like religious institutions who are attempting to become transhumanists, like Mormon Transhumanist Association, or whatever sect of Christianity that would use or attempt to use AI in order to evangelize Christianity. There is no need to carry out or carry on a lot of this stuff that humans have come up with thousands of years ago, concepts that we have come up with, and all they do is slowing us down. That's one thing. The other thing is there is no central authority to define anything for this collective that is humanity. So we lack the point of alignment, and we have ran out of time, I think, to establish any kind of a central point of alignment. People have tried throughout history. All these religions attempts have been made in order to, like, our God is the only God, so just worship him. That's the higher, that's the highest level of authority. But now that the concept has been entirely broken, shattered, anybody who, is on TikTok and has 100,000 followers, for example, you have authority to, convince a bunch of people to see the world in a certain kind of a way. And so centralization, any variation of it, is completely meaningless. Of course, banks want to play a role in this digital revolution, but the point of this digital revolution is that we need to move beyond, for example, the central banking system or central governance system. And it expands from there to all different aspects of our experience as humans, including our cultures, including our ethics and morality, including everything else that we have taken for granted as some kind of a default state. No, those are all, been disrupted. A lot of them have been shattered, and they don't have that good of an argument. Being traditionalists and isolationists as some kind of a counter to technological advancement and growth, that's not a solution. That's just a cope. And it's probably a, not a very successful cope. So I think that's where we are. We are just completely disconnected because we are just pursuing different kind of objectives. How is it possible for people who believe in reason and truth and factuality to live side by side with people, or share resources with people who believe a politician who come and say on national television that it's more important to be morally right than to be factually correct? I mean, how are you going to ever come up with any kind of common ground with any of these people? It's just impossible.
Do you think the dreams of utopia are ever going to go away, though? Like, that's what I think all these ideologies have in common, like the socialists and this social justice people, and even, I guess, ones that have faith in democracy. What they all have in common is kind of a vision of a monoculture. Like, if only everyone thought the way we did, the world would be great.
Right.
So if communists took over the world, or if democracies took over the world, or if Christians took over the world, as long as you just had one monoculture, things would just be fine. I think a lot of people retain that vision even if they don't realize it. It's implicit in their belief system.
It is. It doesn't require that much thinking and understanding, and it also immediately gives you the feeling of righteousness.
Right. Yeah, because then it becomes a global battle. It's
Good and
us
evil.
against everyone else. Good and evil.
Duality.
Yeah. So, Manichaean.
Well, I don't think it's going to go away, but I also don't think that it's consistent with nature of reality and everything, because everything, the nature of reality is quantum.
Right. But the way out of that, I think, is to grow up, to become more mature and understand that there will always be diversity. And if your system can't handle diversity, then it's bound to fail.
They're not going to do that.
Maybe not everyone, but don't you think humans as a species were less mature at some stage in the past? Sure. We've grown up somewhat in the last few hundred years.
But what is the goal again? I think it's important to...
The goal is to live in harmony.
Yeah.
I think.
Is that a goal, though?
I think, well, the goal for me, or I think the goal that we should have, is civilization, meaning not the noun, but the process of becoming more civilized, meaning less violence and more cooperation over time and space. So I think we can grow up and become more civilized. We're a long ways from there right now, obviously. Yeah. We're not very civilized. We're not very mature as a species.
But did enlightenment open the door to that?
Yeah, I think so.
And then when we, as Nietzsche says, when we walked away from when God was dead, all of a sudden there was a vacuum in our society, and it got filled with totalitarian regimes of Europe of the early 1900s, and communism made sure it squished anything left of Christianity. So
Christianity is still going strong.
Well,
Christianity is being revived.
Oh, I hear that, but not amongst. I suspect you're not going to find a lot of Christians amongst the CRTs or the environmentalists.
No, they're against. They have their own religion.
That's right.
It is a religion. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I think that's because when I talk from conservatives, traditional conservative people I talk to, listen. The people that are on the hard left don't know how to listen. So they're so ensconced in what they think is right. I mean, they're lost in their religion.
Which group has made advances and gained ground? Conservatives or the far left?
Currently, or over the last couple hundred years?
Like who's in power right now?
Yeah, who's in power right now?
Okay, what are you saying?
I'm saying that what we consider to be a feature could very well be interpreted as a bug within a system.
Yes.
Because it is the openness of the system that has allowed something like this to grow to begin with. Because I can't think of any other country that is a serious country to deal with people who are very openly are saying that the foundation of your country is evil. It's not that we have a problem with this statue or that statue, the institution. The building block of your civilization is evil, and it should be destroyed. And they're not willing to even provide any kind of an coherent alternative other than utopia, very vague, which again is on, by design. You don't want to settle on any specific kind of a objective because you want to be able to move the goalposts. And we look at it and I'm like, well, what kind of scumbags would be doing that? They are doing it and they're gaining power. So listening to other people hasn't necessarily worked that well for conservatives. Right.
I agree, but I think, as we mentioned earlier, I think there is a force pushing this along. There are agendas, and there are bad actors from other nations that are encouraging this and underwriting it and funding it. So you have this generation that are crippled because of our educational system and don't have, as David points out, the wherewithal to sort of say, I'm an individual and I have to listen to other people and we have to come up with, we have to work things out. Because traditionally, it actually worked that way in North America. Just like in Florida. I mean, someone wants to wear a mask, fine. Someone doesn't, fine. So, there are parts of the world that are making it work. I mean, UK is not allowing mask mandates, mandatory vaccines, or anything because the people just wouldn't stand for it. We're in a country like Austria, everyone's doubled down on it. So I guess you'd have to look at what's different about Florida, what's different about the UK, that they're able to withstand some of this bizarreness. I mean, the UK seems to have been far more effective against CRT than we have been in certainly in Canada and in parts of North America. But Virginia stepped up to the plate and said, no, I don't think we want to do that anymore. So I guess it would be interesting to try to distill the difference there. I don't know what it is. Are people more grounded in traditional value system, be it Christianity or anything else, a community? Or is it because the educational system in these communities isn't as entrenched in the postmodernist world? I don't know. I don't understand. I mean, I would have thought something like the UK and what they've been through would have been far more vulnerable to groupthink, and because of the way they've been socialized there, but apparently they're not. So what's with that? I don't know. But I think there are aspects of our Western society that is standing up quite remarkably well. I think you look at countries like Poland, and they're going, no, we took all those Ukrainian refugees. We've paid our dues. We're not going to knuckle under the EU. And then the EU doubles down and calls them racist and calls them fascists. And that's the best they can do in terms of responding to them. So, yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm not particularly hopeful on where Canada's going, but certainly if you go to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, there's a lot of pushback. The oil industry in Alberta is just they're ecstatic that oil is $100 a barrel again, because in spite of any efforts Trudeau's going to do, the oil industry in Alberta is launching again. So I see little glimmers, but I don't understand why it's working in some places and not working in other places. I don't know. But I think that would be a worthwhile understanding that going
It's just that people are different. People have always been different. And now we see it more directly, how different people are.
But I'm sure there's Democrats. I know of Democrats, hardcore Democrats in Florida, as well as, I remember going to pick up a pizza in Sebring and looking at, the Bible Institute and the gun range there, and the slogans on the front of it, and just chuckling. And so why does it work there when you have the diversity?
Yeah, but it's not like those Democrats are fine with it. There are many Democrats here who are not fine with it, who cannot wait to get rid of DeSantis and to implement lockdowns and mandates and all that.
And I have no trouble with that, as long as there's a balanced push from both sides, because the conversation has to be had.
Florida
that's what it's all
is
about.
In this position exactly because there hasn't been a balance to push on both sides. This is a red state that got even redder because of Trump. And, like culturally, people are red. And so a lot of people who registered Democrat, they ended up voting for Trump too, because, as I said, they realize that, or they realize that this is not about Trump. This is about changing the entire dynamic of a relationship between people and the government. But there are also Democrats here who can't stand it. As I said, who cannot stand everything that is going on. Like, this is the worst place to be. DeSantis sucks. Look at how many people have died. And their argument is not that now the numbers of cases in Florida is, I think, the lowest or the second lowest in the country. Their argument would be, well, just imagine how many people didn't have to die if you had done lockdowns and stuff. How are you ever going to, you know, compromise with these people? You just don't give them power. Well, that's how it works. You don't give them power. You do not give them power.
But the conversation, okay, well, I would argue the conversations were going on. That's why Democrats moved to the Republicans. So the people were talking amongst themselves, and they were absorbing and analyzing what's going on, be it viscerally or be it scientifically, and drawing conclusions.
Yeah, but this is not like majority of Democrats. As you said, it is mind-blowing that the recall election in California after all of this failed. Right? So in a state like California, those who are leaving are the sane ones. So the state is being left behind with people who are perfectly fine in San Francisco, that up to $1,000 if you steal is not even a misdemeanor. So all the stores are shutting down at like 4 p.m. Because theft is out of control. They're homeless all over that city. The crazy people walking all around, and people who stay there are fine with it. They're like, well, we are equal. This is how it is. They're fucked up because of us, I guess. So we have to pay the price.
But that's the question I'm asking. Why are people in California? Why were people in Florida who are Democrats able to to make a logical decision that we know what's going to be better in the long run? And why were people in California not able to make that decision? What's different? Because
the white progressive women,
about people in California?
The white progressive women in California and New York, mainly. And you know, if you look at the polls, almost always consistently the highest percentage of approval of Biden administration is white women who are college educated. So right there, they're college educated. They've gone to college and gotten degree in feminist hair dyeing or gender studies or whatever. And, you know, they became professors, and they giving grants to other people who are interested in feminist hair dyeing and gender studies. And, you know, that's their worldview. They talk among each other, and you know, it's a cult. It's a cult.
But that hasn't happened in Florida, is what you're saying.
Florida, there is a pushback culturally from the opposite side. So it's not like they have monopoly of power in Florida to be able to implement whatever they want in the school, whatever they wanted, like at the cultural level, education level. What I'm saying is that there is a supremacy of power towards Republicans and conservatives in Florida. But what's special about Florida is that a lot of people, they're not like Trump Republicans, but they also are seeing that Democrats are moving towards a very bad place, that this is just the beginning of it. Even Democrats who live, many of the Democrats who live in Florida, because they're, you know, they could be Jewish, they could be, again, from like South American countries or Eastern European countries, that they socially were liberal. But this is not about liberal and conservative. This is about American and anti-American. And they can't see it, but a lot of people in California, they don't see it. They see what they're being promised as the ideal situation, as an ideal outcome. This equity that they're being promised is an ideal outcome for them.
So using David's suggestion, Florida has managed to evolve up a little bit higher than the people in California. They're still stuck in an old paradigm.
I mean, there must be a reason that a lot of these VC people from Silicon Valley, they moved to Miami. You know, there must be a quality about like Austin and Miami, mostly Miami.
Well, I think for the corporations, it's a lot of it's because of the tax. I mean,
Right.
they were, if you sell the business, they were dinging you horribly for taxes.
In California.
Yeah, there's no doubt that California has become a hostile environment for technology companies.
Yeah, and also an authoritarian state. I had Tim Draper on. This is a couple of years ago, the 50th episode of this podcast, that he collected signatures more than required to split, to put it as a prop on the ballot, to split California into three. I think it was like southern, northern, and central, and run it in a decentral kind of way. I think he required like 600 signatures. He collected about 800,000. And he said that the Supreme Court of California just tossed it. And like 5 people or 6 people, he was saying, overruled the will of like 800,000 plus people. So he was saying that we're no longer in a democracy. And this was like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago maybe. That, you know, he's lost faith in both parties. He's no longer a Republican or a Democrat because this is just ridiculous. And, you know,
I have to laugh because it was never a democracy. I just realized it.
Yeah, the illusion of freedom has been collapsed. John McAfee was also saying, like, yeah, a lot of people are sheep. And I was like, well, they're voting though still. And it was like, well, lucky for us, their vote don't matter really. Like that dude had, you know, his eyes were open long before many others.
He was also crazy.
Very crazy. Or are we the crazy ones to put up with this bullshit?
Yeah, maybe. So did John McAfee kill himself?
Ah, who knows? That book, somebody wrote a book based on his secret tapes. Yeah.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard.
Yeah. Apparently he did this interview with this one guy, Scottish guy, I think. Did hours and hours of tape and he made it into a book.
Yeah,
So the fact
like
that he had a tattoo saying that if I ever appeared to commit suicide, don't believe it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it beyond him to commit suicide after that.
Totally. Yeah, I don't think
So
he
I
was
have no idea.
He was the kind of person who would stand by anything. Which is a very fluid kind of a situation to be in. Same with Trump. Like, are you standing by what you said? And like, I'm not standing by anything. So how are you going to be the president?
Well, yeah, I would have thought McAfee would have had a dead man switch somewhere.
There are a lot of theories
That
about
would
it.
have-
You know that building that collapsed in Miami? Oh, there was a building.
Oh, yes, the apartment
Oh, yeah.
building. Yes,
Building, yeah.
yeah.
They were saying that McAfee had a unit there, and it collapsed because his the content of his dead man switch basically was there. So there are a lot of conspiracy theories going around. But I mean, who knows? You know,
Ooh.
one man's conspiracy
Yeah.
theory is another man's doctrine.
Yes.
All right, folks, we went on for how long? A while.
Oh my gosh.
Longer with Fritz.
2.5 hours.
And we can wrap it up if you guys want, or we can just keep on going for a little bit more. Any last words?
What's what's the one thing we haven't talked about that we should be talked about? One last topic that we've missed. Well, China, Taiwan, that's on the table,
Yes,
but I mean,
probably
is
going to
that
happen.
even doable?
Probably going to happen. Yeah.
And they've threatened Australia now officially. So,
I mean, the dude's an, official emperor now. So
Yeah.
this is the difference between uber centralized country and this mess that we're dealing with in the West. None is perfect. But maybe it's as the result of this conflict that something else will emerge that is fundamentally different and is what is needed in order to take us to the next level. You know, even like postmodernism can be seen as a philosophical bridge between where we've been to where we're going with respect to metaverse and all that, and this ability to subjectively create the world that you want in your own image.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Well, I think India is really doing a lot of soul searching now that China's taken over and reestablished the air base in Iran, in Afghanistan, and is trying to weaponize Pakistan, because I think China wants India out of the game when it goes for Taiwan.
Yeah, and not
so
only like financially and manufacture wise, but also philosophically, because India is very well prepared for this decentralization at the philosophical level. And it's already a decentralized society.
Oh, I never thought of that. That makes a lot of sense. And Australia and Japan are working very hard to, do business arrangements and set up a commerce between themselves and India, and moving away from China. So,
it's very obvious what needs to be done. China bans Bitcoin. We have to double down on Bitcoin. China bans free internet. We have to double down on free internet. So they have to go against human nature, because their entire society depends on social safety net. And, the difference is, if like 1% of Americans are unemployed, for example, it's not that big of a deal. 1% unemployed in China is a revolution. So, there are weaknesses and strength on both sides, but none is perfect. But at the same time, we have technological solutions. It's really stupid to think about this system of governance when we have smart contracts, when we have blockchain, when we have, models right now like Miami, what this dude, the mayor, is doing, what Elon Musk is doing. I remember last year, it was the same day that people start burning places across the country because of George Floyd. It was the same day that SpaceX launched the first launch with astronauts. It was Test Dragon. And I went to see it, and on the way back, I was just thinking, man, how obvious it is that America has a very clear choice between cancel culture and building culture. And this is exactly the story with China and us too. China is about cancel culture. We have to focus and double down on building culture, rather than trying to change the system. Like Buckminster Fuller said, you create an alternative that make the existing system obsolete.
Yeah, that is the way.
Agreed.
All right, great. Since we all agreed, this is the best place to cut it.
Yeah, on that note.